Good evening, everyone. And it never happens like that when I say something in my house. Everybody keeps talking still. So thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you very, very much for coming out this evening. Could I ask everyone to please stand for a Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you very much. Council, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any edits or suggestions? I would like to add one item called local share account for the police department, right, regarding a grant. We'll cover that in the action items under Section 8, if that's okay with the council. With the motion and the edit, is that okay? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. First and foremost, a couple of wonderful things to share with everyone tonight, which is why most folks are here. We have two officers that are joining the department. We'd like to recognize them in a couple of minutes, but first we have a proclamation from the American Legion, our local post 491. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. This evening, we have special guests that we are here to honor in anticipation of Veterans Day. So we have Sam Elliott, who's the commander for American Legion Post 491, as well as John DiMatteo, who's the assistant vice commandant from Post 491. So if you join me up front, I'd like to share a proclamation before Veterans Day. And behind you. So I'm going to share this proclamation with you honoring the Borough of Kennett Square's American Legion Post 491. Whereas the mission of the American Legion is to enhance the lives of veterans, military members, and their families. Whereas the William F. Fahey American Legion Post 491 charter was signed in 1920 and was designated to accomplish three goals: to serve as a memorial to those who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country, to be a community gathering space, and to provide a permanent home for Post 491. And whereas members of Post 491 have served in different branches of the armed services in a variety of conflicts and contexts, and Post 491 is a place where members and all generations can connect, share resources, and offer a support system. And whereas the American Legion Post 491's leadership through June 2024, Commander Cindy Abendini, did I say that right? Okay. Cindy Abendini, Vice Commander Bill Taylor, Second Vice Commander John DiMatteo, each grew up in Kennett Square and share their love for the borough, revere its history, and hope for its future. Whereas the new leadership of American Legion Post 491, as of July 1st, 2024, Commander Sam Elliott Sr., Vice President Lance Layton, and Junior Vice Commander John DiMatteo carry on the strong connection to the community. And whereas the American Legion Post 491 holds monthly meetings for veterans, military members, and their families, and runs a thriving youth program. And whereas the American Legion Post 491 operates a well-loved and often used rental hall for various celebrations and meetings. Whereas American Legion Post 491 erected the World War I Memorial at Mary D. Lang School, and with the help of many dedicated volunteers, honors veterans at the legendary and beloved annual Kennett Square Memorial Day Parade. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Matthew Feddick, the Mayor of Borough of Kennett Square, share our sincere gratitude for the American Legion Post 491 for the support of our veterans, military members, and their families in this community. Thanks, Mayor. That's really nice. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind staying there, thank you both, gentlemen, for what you and lots of others have done for our country over the years. We'd like to now start a swearing-in ceremony. We have two new officers, Angel Rodriguez and Chris D'Antonio, who have accepted the offer to become part of our professional police force here in Kennett Square. These two guys will get up in the morning, strap their guns and their bulletproof vests on and go out there to protect us. It's not a crazy, dangerous town, but you never know, and they've accepted that challenge. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Mayor?
Thanks. The chief's going to share some background information before we do the swearing in.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, council. This is always a very exciting time for us, bringing another member onto the force. Actually, I would start with Chaplain. Yes, please. Actually, I think you're going to need the mayor's microphone.
I know that around here, there's people of all faiths and no faith, so I invite you, before I pray and for the officers, I would ask for just a moment of silence, whatever you are led, just that we pray that there's some peace and some unity happens post-election, that we remain civil. So just join me in a moment of silence. Almighty God, whose great power and eternal wisdom embraces the universe, I give you thanks for the brave men of the Kennett Square Police Department, especially Officers Rodriguez and D'Antonio. I give you thanks for these dedicated public servants who have answered your call to serve and protect. Please watch over them and protect them from harm in the performance of their duty to stop crime and violence. Help them keep our streets and homes and places of work and play safe both day and night. I commend them to your loving care because their duty is dangerous in the cause of freedom and justice. Grant them your unending strength and courage in their daily assignments. Protect them always and unite them safely with their loved ones when their duty has ended. In thy matchless name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. I'd just like to give you a little background information on our two candidates which have joined the department. If I could ask first Angel Eduardo Jamal Rodriguez to come forward, please. You're not in trouble, Angel. It's okay. Angel's self-described journey has been one of resilience, determination, and an unwavering commitment to serve. As a first-generation Mexican-American, Angel arrived in the United States from Mexico when he was 11 years old, full of dreams and curiosity about this new land. His family settled in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, an area known as the mushroom capital of the world, and it quickly became a place he would call home. Growing up here, he navigated new challenges and embraced every opportunity that came before him. He graduated from Kennett High School, where he was fortunate to have mentors such as Ms. Loretta Perna, who encouraged him to pursue his dreams and set him on a path to higher education. Determined to give back to his community, he attended Immaculata University, earning a bachelor's degree of arts in criminology with minors in psychology and sociology. The Education Foundation provided insight into the human experience, helping him further understand the social and psychological factors impacting individuals and communities. Angel's career in law enforcement began in April of 2018 when he joined the Chester County Prison as a correction officer. He developed a deep respect for public safety and a commitment to justice there. In January of 2024, he took yet another leap and attended the Delaware County Community Police Academy full-time and graduated in June. From there, he joined the Chester County's Sheriff's Department and continued serving the community, which he describes as giving him so much. In October of 2024, he transitioned to the Kennett Square Police Department, bringing him full circle to the community that has raised him. Today, Angel continues to participate in local events like the Kennett Run and the Kennett Half Marathon. And if I can add a little stipend to that, after Angel worked the night shift leading up to the half marathon, Angel then went and ran the 5K in the marathon afterwards. Just to let you know the level of craziness that comes with him. Angel often visits the Kennett High School to connect with students and to pay it forward the guidance that he received from Ms. Perna. Becoming a police officer once felt like an impossible dream, but with perseverance and support, he's come to support and protect the place that shaped him. Looking forward, Angel is excited to continue building relationships within Kennett Square, giving back to the community, and working with youth to show them that anything is possible. Angel's closing statement was, "This town is more than just my home. It's where my journey began, and it remains the foundation of everything I strive to accomplish." And with that, I introduce you to Angel Jamal Rodriguez. And now I would ask for Christopher D'Antonio to step forward, please. Thank you, Chris. Chris was born and raised in Concord Township, Delaware County. We will not hold that against you, Chris, okay? Welcome to Chester County. His family has deep roots in the borough of Kennett Square. Chris's father, uncle, and step-uncle were all raised in Kennett Square. Chris worked as a pipe fitter with Aqua America before attending and graduating from the police academy in 2014. Chris comes to the Kennett Square Police Department with 9 years of law enforcement experience and service. Chris was previously employed as a police officer by the boroughs of Parkside and Upland. Chris also served 4 years as a deputy sheriff with the Chester County Sheriff's Office. During his tenure in these previous positions, Chris served as a field training officer, a defensive tactics, and active threat response instructor. He also is certified in instructor specializing in patrol tactics, de-escalation, and certified rifle armor. Chris joins us tonight with his wife, Jacqueline, son, Nicholas, and daughter, Riley. Welcome aboard, Chris. Angel, would you please come forward? You're not in trouble again.
You have family with you?
Yeah, my mother.
Yeah.
Please.
Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. And then repeat after me. I, Angel Shamal Rodriguez, do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and that I will enforce the laws of this Commonwealth and the ordinances of the Borough of Kennett Square, and that I will discharge the duties of my office as a police officer with fidelity. So one of the questions we always ask, go ahead. Whenever we're going through the hiring process, one of the questions we always ask is, do we have a Spanish speaker? And the chief said, not this time. We don't only have a Spanish speaker, but we have a hometown man who's Latino, who's committed to his community, and we're really excited to bring him on board. So congratulations and welcome aboard. Thank you.
Please come up.
Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. There you go. Then repeat after me. I, Christopher J. D'Antonio,
I, Christopher J. D'Antonio,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend
obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the excuse me. Sorry about that. And that I will enforce the laws of this Constitution of this Commonwealth and the ordinances of the Borough of Kennett Square,
and the of the Borough of Kennett Square,
and that I will discharge the duties
duties
as police officer with fidelity.
with fidelity. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Well done. Thank you. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break before council resumes so that we can appreciate all the officers, get some family photos, and let those that don't want to stay exit the hall. Thank you.
Probably not.
Any words of wisdom from our former council person and former president before we start back up formally, Doug?
You're great, Bob.
I'd like to reconvene the meeting. Thanks for coming out. It's quite an honor and a thrill to recognize veterans as well as new officers. So thanks very much for coming out. I know it makes them feel good and their families as well. So with that, we're back on to the agenda. The first item is consent items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Julie. Is there a second? Thank you, Sam. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda items pass, including the new police union contract, which is a real big one, that's for sure. We've got a couple of action items. The first is a follow-on from Monday evening, considering Sylvan's waiver request. Mr. Forte, is there anything else you want to say?
Richie Forte, Regional Director, Sylvan America, 652 West South Street. Yeah, I have 7 points I'd like to bring up. First is to discuss the daily wastewater discharge, an overview. A lot of paper, but I'll make it quick. My goal here is to demonstrate that these violations are rare and not representative of our normal operation. I took the time frame between December 2023 and September 2024, noted the amount of days in each month, which we're talking about a total of 305 days. The days in question that result in a notice of violation, I listed the months where we had some days where we exceeded 1,000 gallons. The data covers a total of the 305 days from December through September, excuse me, detailing monthly breakdowns of days exceeding 1,000 gallons. Out of these 305 days, 10 days exceed the 1,000 gallon limit. Each of these exceedance coincide with rainfall in the area and are unrelated to our normal operation. This means approximately 97% of the days were under our 1,000 gallon threshold. And then the sheets in the back are just our monthly self-reporting that we give to everybody. So that's my first. Next, I'd like to discuss the proactive repairs and the financial investment. From Trinity Subservice LLC, where we did the UV lining of one of the pipes in March 12th, 2024. And then on the back page is an image of the check that we paid that invoice there. This was the first really big step to eradicating or mitigating the situation here. I've mentioned that we spent up to $190,000. I came on board in January. This is one of my first to-dos here to get this done. Next, we have, although I haven't scheduled it, today I signed a proposal for the second line. When I did this first one, I was a business owner for 27 and a half years. So when you spend that kind of money, $16,000, you want to see, did this alleviate the problem? Okay, we're at the point where maybe about 80%, so we have to do the second line. First proposal is the one 24151337-1 is to perform push camera video pipe to inspect that line. Okay. Cost of that's $2,400. And that is to determine what type of, whether we're going to do a UV lining or they're going to paint the inside. We just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing there. The second one is for the actual work to be performed. That's going to cost $24,780. Those proposals have been signed by me, sent back to the Trinity Subservice just today. So I haven't received anything back from them. So I have this that is the plan right now to mitigate the situation. And I really believe it's going to happen. What else have we done? Just recently in September, first week of September, we noticed that our discharge rates were close to the 1,000-gallon limit. And we were like, what's going on here? Do we have a leak somewhere? Is there water running? You know, everybody's kind of running around like, what is going on? There's no rainfall. This normally doesn't happen. So in the tank where we collect and monitor and the flow meter and everything, that's where we went first. So we hired Cape Associates. They came out and investigated for us, and there was 4 floats that they had to repair. And they also told us that the flow meter had to be repaired as well, and then all the electrical boxes that go with that. I have this here as well. We had to hire Cape was a little over $1,000. There's an invoice behind this paper that I just sent. Okay. So then hired LRM. And that was for the new flow meter and the converter box to go with it. That cost $4,700. Performed on October 24th. So just 2 Thursdays ago. Okay. Haven't received an invoice. Communication. Robert and I have been in communication multiple times. You guys hire the services of Pannoni to do your, I guess they hand out the violations. So any violation that I get, I respond to. And this is the summary of all the violations that we've received, those 10, okay? And I've responded within the 20-day period, emphasizing the proactive communication and how to resolve this. I haven't received any feedback. But that's back to that. Just a summary. Okay, no more paperwork, I promise. Lastly, I just want to kind of give a little bit of background. Heart's beating too fast. I was born and raised in Kennett Square, so there's a deep connection to the community. I'm a local property owner in the borough. I'll have my 4th student graduate from Kennett High School this year. I owned a mushroom operation for 27 and a half years. I made the switch over to Sylvan January of this year. Sylvan has been operating on South Street for 20 years. We're committed to the compliance and to being a partner to the borough here. I think, Aaliyah, is that your Ellie? You asked Robert if there was any fines that the borough or the public works incurred because of our overage. And Robert, you said no.
Well, the only thing I would add though is
Oh, man.
in the papers, in the paperwork you gave me, there's 5 exceedances on nitrogen. The paperwork you just handed out.
Yes.
There's 5 exceedances on nitrogen.
And I
They're
think,
minor exceedances, but they are exceedances.
right. And I do think that's infiltration from the surrounding businesses around us. I really do.
That's ammonia. That's ammonia's from,
Supplement.
organic compounds.
Yeah. And we
So,
have mushroom operations all around us.
yep.
I'd rather not say any names. They could be a customer. Um, so at any rate, this impact, if you really look at the days, the 10 violations, and I know the nitrogen, I still think that's coming from the groundwater in. So it's going to be there, even if we fix the pipe. It's not going to come to you guys, which is great. And that pipe will get fixed. And I am so confident that we will alleviate this situation. I go back to December 18th, which the overflow was ridiculous on that day. I wasn't a part of Sylvan that day, but Brian Angelucci, my colleague, had hired KBX, who is a local contractor in the area, and they pushed that. And that's the day we found that there was a problem in the pipes. No one knew where the water was coming from. We really didn't. We're there now. Trinity did the first work. I know it's not my money, but as a business owner for all those times, you got to wait and say, all right, did I fix the problem? Well, obviously, no. We've got to spend some more money. That's $24,000. That's upkeep on it. I'm going to get this done. I'm the right guy for the borough. I'm the right person for everybody in here as well. I plan to be there a long time. So with that, I request that the penalties be waived.
Fair enough. Rob, what say you?
I go back to the, original, time when we were visited in by them because of, overages, and council's decision at that time was that it would be one time. Now, obviously it's council's decision here. The rainwater does not cause that much of an issue with the plant because we are under capacity there. The big thing is that I don't think it should be zeroed out because there are nitrogen issues, and those are treatment issues.
Rob, how is the fine determined?
Panoni actually figures out the fine for us. There's a chart according to the overages, how significant the overages are.
Those fines are defined by the state law that governs this program?
You mean the amount of the fine?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It wasn't something, it's not part of the borough.
No, it's not a
ordinance,
random
part of
number
the
we came up with.
program.
No.
Council comment, Mr. Mayor?
Just quick. Rob, is the cost to treat the overage that the borough incurs, what is the cost, what's the differential between our cost to treat and the fine? Do you know?
I would have to look at the gallons, during that month that were treated on the times of the overages, actually, that have the nitrogen, excess nitrogen or ammonia, and figure out what that would be. But it's not a significant amount.
It's not significant?
It's not significant.
What percentage of sales is this $40,597 fine?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I really don't.
Any
I'm
other
more of a distribution guy.
Okay, fair enough. Any comment from anyone in the audience? Is there a motion to waive the Sylvan fine of $40,597.20? The motion, so it's still due.
Okay.
Thanks for trying.
We appreciate all the work that you are doing to mitigate it.
You got it. Thanks.
Next up is a follow-up again from Monday. That's the consideration of the draft 2025 budget. Again, this is a draft budget. We get another shot at this in December again. Nick and Kyle are available to anyone who has detailed questions, who would like to literally sit down and understand the budget and get any questions that are out there answered. That's our responsibility to you. So with that, why don't we just have a discussion right now, literally, and I guess I'll ask Kyle and Nick to be prepared. Is that all right? To answer any questions that come up from council or anyone else in the audience as well. What we're looking for potentially is to approve the draft budget. Again, it's a draft, it's not final. And then a motion to consider advertising the proposed 2025 budget and also the potential tax increase that may come with that as well. So with that, council discussion. Dan? Timothy? Need anything right now? Marcella?
No.
Julie? Anyone in the audience that would like to comment, please come on up to the microphone and please share your comments with us. Effectively, we'd love to hear them. Yes, we are. Yep. Any comment?
I have a problem with any approval of the budget today because this budget should have been introduced months ago, a couple months ago for the preliminary. We should have more time for discussion. And then when you have broad topics, we're not limited to 3 minutes. Although I'm not supposed to do a soliloquy,
Four, you got
we're
four.
allowed to, we're not limited to that.
You are
Not-
tonight.
not- We are not limited.
You are
It's what
tonight.
you're doing now. I'm not talking now and you're interjecting. It's my time.
Go ahead.
What happens is that when you have big topics or capital projects in the borough, it's not limited to a 4-minute thing because you're talking about the budget this time. You're talking about maybe letting NVF in. You're talking about somebody building something that's going to impact our whole town, not individual homes, capital projects. And I've been here longer than you, Mr. Nars. And we've always had an open floor. And I can show you pictures in the newspaper of me in those forums. So let's add it up. The gentleman wanted to speak the other day. He said he spoke for 3 people. You shut him down right away on 3 minutes. This is a project of great magnitude, and you shut Mr. Grubb down. You shut me down. Of course, I was going to soliloquy so I can understand it, okay, at some points. But the bottom line is that he came with some concrete stuff you couldn't even answer. You don't know that man's history, and you better look it up. Because obviously it was above anybody in here's pay raise with knowledge, okay? I don't know anybody could match him. You didn't even understand what he was saying. I would need a course in what he worked in to understand him, but he was on point. That I know. So I'm saying you didn't get the public enough time, and I think it needs to be advertised, and we need to use our daily local. We need to use the internet. We need to use every available resource of advertisement to reach the public like we used to, so people know. And by the way, you said it wasn't going to be 3 times. I told you what I heard you say. 1 time, maybe 2, 3 more. This is the 3rd time. We can't pay for this building. And what you robbing Peter to pay Paul within the budget, we can't do it. It needs to be sold. I can't put this back up there just because of my hands. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? With that, is there? Yeah.
Kyle, can you explain the different places people can see the budget online and there's a deep dive? that you-
Sure.
Let's get into that. But we do the newspaper to know the budget exists.
Sure.
That's what I'm talking.
So we may be able to address both here. On our website, we have a pop-up. So it's the first thing that you'll see when you go on there. You can see on there, you'll be able to access our presentations from the last couple of meetings. You'll be able to see the detailed budget, but you'll also be able to get a link to ClearGov, which is software that we have. And it tracks the last, I forget, 3, 4, 5 years of spending by account. So it makes it really easy. This is kind of tough. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's graphical. It's easy to follow with colors. You can see where your tax dollars are going. So I really encourage you to check that out. Secondly, understanding if you're not regularly using the internet, we've got a couple printed copies of the line item detailed budget. We're happy to give those out tonight too.
That's what we're voting on tonight, is to make sure it's advertised.
That's what
Line item. This is the line item?
Correct.
I don't see a breakdown of each line so we can understand.
There's a lot of generic.
Yeah, it's a lot of generic. There's no definition.
We can also give you this is just a printout of that software I was telling you about, and it has some more descriptions in it.
Okay.
So I can share that with you as well. It's all, it's all public. Yep.
Could I ask you to come up and just introduce yourself and where you live, sir? There's folks online that are watching as well.
Okay, Troy Thompson, 612 D Street. Recently retired, so now I get to attend these meetings. But one thing that I would look for, I'm worked in banking 40 years, financials, operations, cyber, the whole 9 yards. I would look for something similar to what he's indicating as a chart of accounts from a GL perspective. What constitutes permissible expenses that would go into each of these categories? I think that helps add clarity. Second thing, I've talked to a few people in the borough because I'm very concerned about capital budget in regards to the truck traffic coming through town. I've talked to Sappy's office, had a very good meeting with them for 45 minutes, trying to understand delineation of where Kennett Borough, where Kennett Township, because if you've been following Kennett Township, their budget just went crazy. So I understand we have some shared responsibilities with our adjacent locations and so forth, but talking to Sappy's office, the borough is responsible for some of these. The state has taken action, the Department of Transportation, to route traffic, truck traffic through here. Our infrastructure was never designed for that. So I'd be interested to more understand how we depleting our infrastructure of these roads. Again, we got the manhole here as you're leaving town. Everybody does that swerve. Nobody does 35. And there's a whole nother tangent with the police department that they can't even use speed guns to even get the people that are doing 50 through our town. That's another topic. But again, from my concern, I want to understand what is the chart accounts definition of the GLs? What is the subcategory you might be, but also how does that whole infrastructure play out? Because they're telling me the borough pays for most of these roads that are being depleted for a use that was never intended for that. And I'll tell you one last thing, being on D Street, and I called, today, and I think they're reaching out to you. I was out in the street directing a tractor trailer trying to turn down D Street because they closed that. You and I had talked about, we should never have a tractor trailer come down. I've already had my mirror knocked off one time. You can't get more than one car past that. So again, as we go through these expenditures, we have expansion that's taken place. I don't know who would be responsible, but somebody should have a policeman out there to kind of guide that traffic because it just dog-legged around. It was all backed up. It was gridlock on D Street. We had people blowing down the alley. That's what, 10, 15 miles an hour? I looked out because I heard a car blowing down. I think that's the other thing is when we do expansion, what's the incremental impact? Because honestly, my opinion is that developer should be paying his office to put an officer on that street. So I'd like to understand how that impact comes back into a budget or it becomes an incremental spend that whoever it is that's creating the impact has to cover.
Yeah, we're happy to provide all of that detail
Okay.
with the one request being that you give us a chance to talk through governmental accounting because there is a layer of technicality that's different than the private side. And it gives a reference frame for all of these funds because it's not as easy to use funds from one to pay for something else. So it would be great to connect and kind of go through that and get feedback.
And I've got plenty of time.
Congratulations.
And again, I'm not looking to be a thorn in your side, but my family has been in this area for over 20 years. I've been in the borough for over 5. I feel you guys do a fantastic job, but I think there needs to be more involvement from the community to help bridge some of the things. I talked to the public works area. They don't have the resources to go sit in Sappy's office for 45 minutes like I did. So I like the idea of setting up subgroups to kind of do the hard work. the easy work, but the
Sure.
hard work and get it.
I was just about to interject that there are committees. There's an infrastructure committee, there's a finance.
There's a finance committee who would love to have you.
Openings on all of those committees now that you're retired.
Infrastructure one, I missed that. I was doing relief supplies to North Carolina, so I could not make it. I figured that.
But you can become a member of one of those committees so that you get
I
the
will do that.
updates.
I will do that. Thank you.
Is there a motion to advertise the proposed 2025 budget, including the potential tax increase?
A motion to approve.
Thank you, Julie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joel. Any other discussion from council? All those in favor? Any opposed? It's unanimous. Not good, but unanimous. We have two important employment agreements. The first is for a gentleman who's been here for nearly 26 years, Chief? 28 years, forgive me, who's really, over that time, has grown and caused what I think most of us, I think I'm speaking for the council, I hope I am, probably one of the most professionally run police departments in the entire area, much because of the leadership of yourself and the next gentleman we're going to talk about as well. We have the chief's contract, which is up at the end of the year. He will be retiring on January 1st of 2029. So his contract runs from January 1st, 2025 through December 31st of 2028. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from anyone in the audience? Is there a motion to approve the contract for Chief Holdsworth from 2025 through 2028?
So moved.
Thank you. Ellie, is there a second? Thank you, Sam. Any other discussion from council?
Just an appreciation for all the work Chief does and he brings to the table every time.
Said. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Likewise, we have Lieutenant Rongus's contract, which runs alongside the union contract, which is also from 2025, January 1st of 2025 through December 31st of 2029. Lieutenant Rongus has been with the department for over 16 years now, I believe, and certainly has become a leader in his own right and really helps the chief with running much of the operations of the department as well. Is there a motion to approve the new agreement for Lieutenant Rongus?
I move to approve the agreement for Lieutenant Ronkus.
Thank you, Kathleen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Julie.
Before you take a vote, I'm sorry, excuse me, before you take a vote on that, can I just ask that we place one item that we've talked extensively about on the record? Just that, just in the interest of transparency and my professional and ethical responsibilities as an attorney as well as solicitor for the borough, that I played no role in the negotiation on behalf of the borough for the contract involving either the chief or Lieutenant Rongus, given my relationship with them both.
Thank you, Eddie. Council, there's a motion and a second. Discussion, council? Anyone in the audience like to share a comment? If you can answer that best, certainly the last 5 years.
Yes, yes, we have now.
Please, Mr. Mayor.
How long? So his first contract just expired. It was 4 years at that point in time. Oh, in 4 years. This is so
They're outside of the bargaining agreement. Outside of service
So they need it.
contract.
I'm sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thank you very much, Chief and Lieutenant. We appreciate you having you here as part of Kennett Square, that's for sure.
Thank you. And just to add to, Lieutenant Rongus had to run out. He's got to prep for a 5 a.m. search warrant, so he didn't want to stick around.
Okay, fair enough. I'd like to add the item we talked about at the beginning of the meeting to the agenda, which is the local share agreement for a grant application for the police department. Chief?
Certainly. So let me give you some background on this. This kind of came up, I don't want to call it in the last minute, but about last week, we received formal notification that the grant we had submitted through the LSA in 2023 was actually just awarded with the award list they released on 10/24, I believe it was, which then obviously ignited my interest to want to then seek, the current one that's been open since July and closes this November 30th. So what I did was I put forward a staff report and a resolution for you. We would like to request through the DCED under the local share account approximately $125,000, which would be used to purchase traffic safety equipment such as a vehicle, a four-wheel drive police vehicle, a trailer to haul all this traffic safety equipment around, additional speed trailers, additional speed signage material, and additional speed data recorders. And essentially, this would become a traffic safety unit. And really, the goal is to deal with the continued increase in all the traffic safety and pedestrian and vehicular concerns that we deal with throughout our community. We currently have one speed trailer that is about 24 and a half years old. We were able to get it working. It kind of died on us over the past week again. It's in grand need of replacement. Yes. Yeah, it disappeared from our active area. So really the goal is to bring this forward to try and more proactively deal with all of our traffic safety concerns, instead of just having, a singular piece of equipment that we're moving around. And again, this would be essentially a traffic safety unit, all self-enclosed, that we'd be able to move the location, from wherever our needs are and continue doing our studies around the municipality. So to give you a little bit of background, so because we did realize that we received the award, all of a sudden ignited the interest to want to get this in before it closes. So what I'm bringing forward to you tonight is to seek approval to file for this grant, to provide a resolution so we can submit it. Now, granted, we do have a few weeks left. We have until the 30th to get it submitted into the system. But then some of the discussion, just for full transparency here, some of the discussion came up is we are also, which is on the consent item for tonight, have submitted another grant through the LSA on behalf of Longwood Fire Company for additional fire equipment and resources that they obviously need as well, that we're trying to partner with to do that. And part of the conversation came up that our grant consultant had a concern that we may essentially be competing against ourselves if we submit these two grants at the same time. The research that I did, I kind of don't agree with that analogy, because I printed out the list of awards that were just recently received, and I found, multiple pages and pages and pages of multiple municipalities that have been given multiple awards. And I'll give you just a couple examples here. In East Lansdowne Borough, they were awarded $1 million for their long lane sanitary sewer replacement and resurfacing. They were awarded $159,000 for municipal vehicle purchases. They were awarded $60,000 for an intersection improvement. They were awarded then another $41,000 for an additional project. And really the list goes on and on. I printed out probably about 150 to 200 municipalities that received multiple awards. So I find some potential flaw in that theory that we could be competing against ourselves. I know if we don't submit the grant, we're certainly not going to have a chance of getting awarded it. So I guess really what I'm asking for you this evening is to consider approving the submission. Again, the submission is not being made today or tomorrow. It does have to be made before the 30th, and provide the resolution. If through some due diligence we find that this really is not in our best interest, I will gladly hold back on submitting the grant. But this is our only council meeting between now and then to get this resolution approved. I do think it's a very worthwhile investment to try and get into. And again, from this list of countless municipalities in Chester County, in Delaware County, Allegheny, Erie, all throughout the Commonwealth, have been given multiple awards. So I don't find that we're really competing against ourselves, essentially. So that would be my request for this evening.
If I understand, there's not a match for an LSA grant. Is that correct?
There is no match.
Kyle? Comment?
No, the chief said it correctly.
Council, Mr. Mayor?
I just want to point out that I think yesterday the chief had reached out and said he was going to pull the LSA grant from council's consideration, and I suggested that he leave it on and let council make the decision instead of by himself to not submit it. When he sent over the information, Darby Borough, I think, had 7 or 8 awarded in the same grant period. And I would say that the number one complaint that we get in the borough is traffic period. It's just, it's the number one complaint is speeding, it's traffic. And these are items that we have never been able to afford. We've been talking about a new speed monitoring system for years and years and years, and it just never makes the budget because there's other priorities. So I think it is important to submit for this, because if we don't do it, we're not going to fund it. There is nowhere in this budget for any of those items on that list. I would say that the grant application for the fire department is absolutely critical and needs to go in, but that money is already committed. That money is already invested by the borough and would offset the money that we are already committing. So it's not money in addition to, or it's going to offset, correct? So if, I think it's worth the risk for both, because the traffic safety would never be funded. And we have already committed the funds on the fire department, and this just reduces the amount of money that we would already do. So I think it's worth the potential risk. Otherwise, we just don't get it.
Thank you. Andy?
Bob, just on the experience for that, just for council's edification, my understanding with the LSA grants are that the chief is correct in the sense of, for example, if the fire company made 3 grants for 3 specific things, you're going to be bidding against yourself for those 3 grants, but 3 separate grants for in the borough for different things, they will permit and allow. You're not bidding against yourself from our experience with it. So.
Thank you. Public comment? Please.
Just for my understanding is, so Longwood is not part of the borough, correct? The fire department? You have an agreement
Correct.
for them to provide services. So I don't think that there's a big risk here, but non-performance of the clauses associated with the grant, is there any risk that you see where you are in one bundle and Longwood doesn't fulfill all the requirements of the grant, and then there's an obligation back to the borough?
So that, I guess if I can answer that, and I might even just kick that over to Andy here. So that wouldn't, those grants would be completely separate. So if they didn't meet some obligation on the purchase or their procurement of the equipment that was under theirs, would have nothing to do with this other.
Okay, that, I just wanted to make sure that we don't have a liability if they fail to execute. And we
Well,
don't-
that I will turn over to our solicitor.
Sure. So my understanding from the grant that we're applying for is for AED and other medical equipment. So basically what would happen is if we were to get that grant, that information, or excuse me, that equipment would be turned over to the borough, and it would then be turned over to Longwood for use. So the only requirements that we would likely have from other experience would just be recording and reporting back requirements that the borough could do.
Yeah, I was more thinking about if there is a time span that has to be fulfilled, and if something is back ordered or anything else like that. So from what I'm hearing is there is no really blowback onto the borough if they fail, or the vendor they're purchasing the equipment from doesn't meet it.
No, not usually. No, we haven't had that instance in the past.
Okay.
Good question, though.
Is there a motion to approve the chief's submission on behalf of the Kennett Square Police Department and LSA grant in the amount of $125,000?
I will move to approve the application.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Timothy. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? There you go. The last action item was just a brief discussion, I think, on the December schedule. Typically, Matt, correct me, there's been 1 meeting in December, at least at times. We had
As long as the budget's passed.
Yeah, we had discussed back and forth whether to try to consolidate the December meetings into 1 meeting. I mean, after kicking around with Kathleen a little bit, it's probably more prudent, I think, to keep both of the meetings on the schedule. If there's nothing, we can make it quick, but at least if we've got them and we need it, we can use it. Is that okay with council, the mayor? Kyle, you okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, so unless there's any other discussion, we'll just keep the schedule as it is right now. With that, we do have a public comment period right now. Certainly anyone who wants to share anything that's not on the agenda. We'll also have opportunities for our 2 workshop sessions. After this public comment, we're going to be discussing what the Planning Commission has been doing around short-term rentals, and also a discussion on this property, this parcel, 600 South Broad Street, in terms of where we are and what do we do from here going forward. So two beefy subjects. Before that, are there any public comments just in general? Watson? No? With that, let's get right into it. Andy, you're first up. Tell us what's going on.
All right. And I think Rachel will bring up our presentation. Good evening, folks. I hope we're all still awake. The Planning Commission took direction from the council in the past to research the presence and effect of short-term rentals on our community. A subgroup of the Planning Commission, including Doug and Carol, and I have worked on this for a while, and we've looked at measures other communities have taken with regard to STRs or short-term rentals. These being what you do if you do an Airbnb or VRBO. And we looked at the present status as best can be determined in Kennett. Starting in September of this year, we brought forward an online survey regarding this topic. We received about 140 responses, 91 of which were identified as borough residents. The data, the information I will present tonight is only from those who identified as borough residents. I can turn it up. Let me. I think we both did it. So, okay. Here we go. All right. So, of the 91 responses we got from Kennett, we asked the question, are you familiar with the concept or the practice of short-term rentals? And as you can see by the chart, basically everybody but one person said they were. So they are familiar, people who responded were familiar with STRs. Then we asked them, well, you're familiar with it, but have you used it in your own travels? And again, the vast majority of people said, yes, they have. About 85% of the respondents, so about 80 or so people. So they're familiar with both the concept and the practice. All right, come on, come on. All right. It's not working right now, so there we go. So we then asked them, well, what did you think of your experience? And as you can see there, out of 3 stars, they got about 2.5 stars. So most people were satisfied with their experience.
Out of 3.
Yeah, as you can see, there are 2.5 out of 3 there. And we'll come back to this a little bit later. Whatever their experience was as a guest at a short-term rental. We then asked them if they knew of a short-term rental within 1 block of their residence. As you can see, a little more than half of them said yes. So half of 91, 45, 46, 47 people said they actually knew of a short-term rental within their block. So it is prevalent. It is the way we brought the focus of the survey back to the borough. Now, the question obviously is, did people who took the survey take the survey because they knew there was a short-term rental within their neighborhood, or is it just random? We can't discern that. I didn't have time to ask that many questions. And again, the survey was anonymous. We did not ask for a name or location for it, other than that they were a borough resident. And I know this is going to be a little tough to see, but this is an approximate map of existing short-term rentals as identified by the major short-term rental sites as Airbnb or VRBO. There are approximately 40 sites, and some of them vary because some are multiple units in one building, such as on State Street above the tattoo parlor, for reference. And as you can see, they're mostly situated along State Street and Union Street are the primary target areas because that's close to the center of town. And so you can see a couple of outliers there, but about half are in a commercial district and the other half are in residential districts. as exists now. Now, it's not a definitive list because STRs come and go. Some are not advertised, some fly under the radar, but this is a fair approximation. We also, this is not on the slide, did some statistical research which showed in Kennett, the average occupancy rate for short-term rental was just around 50%. So 50% of the time, they have people in there. If we take a quick diversion, if you look at $200 a night, which is the average price for a short-term rental in Kennett Square, you do 15 nights a month, that's $3,000 a month. Is that more than you would get for a one-bedroom or two-bedroom rental? Yes. So there is a strong incentive for people to do this. And there's not any way of getting around that. All right, come on, come on. Thank you. We then asked, well, have you as a resident of Kennett been inconvenienced in some way by short-term rentals? And again, we're looking at 87 people who answered the question. 65% of that 87, you can do the math in your head, said no, have not experienced anything. The rest of the folks are in the single digits or double digits, but low numbers. Excessive noise, parking, that is the Kennett Square problem. Litter, trash, damage to the property was a couple, and then whatever else was come along. And I did have a conversation with our good chief about this, and he had indicated to me that over the past 4 or 5 years, he's seen some, but it wasn't something that had risen to the level of worry or concern. Is that a correct statement, Chief?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you. See, I actually did talk to him. But most of the folks haven't experienced a problem with short-term rentals within the borough.
Something on this slide too?
Yes.
Just to supplement this, some of the discussion the planning commission had too was this could be to the person completing it. This might not be unique to a short-term rent. I may, if I'm asked a survey about my neighbor, I may be complaining about excessive noise, parking, congestion, litter, trash. So we don't want to look at this data, even if it is a few response, as it's only because there's a short-term rental. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, we hope that they were considering this in the framework of short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Related to short-term rental.
Correct. What I'm saying is, if we would say, have you experienced any of this from your neighbor too? The same.
The difficulty here, and I don't want to belabor this because
Right.
it's really not big, is you don't always know who's causing the problem, so people will pick on the easy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's why you should report it. We're not saying don't. Yeah, man. The next question we asked was, would you consider using part of your property as a short-term rental? So again, 90 answers, about 18 to 20, some folks said yes. We switched that around. Yes is on top, no is on the bottom. So there are some additional interests expressed by the people who took the survey and adding an STR to their property. So we then said, well, if you do that, where would you do it? Now, one of the things you have to remember, Airbnbs tend to be part of an existing property or a resident. In other words, it may be a room or two as part of their main residence. VRBOs tend to be a whole unit of some kind. So it varies back and forth. It's not 100%, but that's what we've found. So about half of these people, or a third, said they would put it in their house as probably an Airbnb. More than half said, well, they would use something equivalent to an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, which would be a separate standalone facility. Some of them will do an accessory apartment, which by our code says it's a fully equipped apartment in the main residence as opposed to outside. And then just a few said in some sort of separate investment property. Yeah. Oh, you know, okay. So just because the numbers weren't sufficient to make a lot of analysis, we did say, do you currently operate one in the borough? We had like 7 that said yes, and most of them said no. And if it was located, where was it? Most of them are majority are in some other spot, and they were allowed to list them in a list box. Pardon? It would have been in an ADU. It would have been in an accessory apartment. We gave them the opportunity, and you'll see this when you go to the full report online. Their verbal answers, their written answers to that question. Okay. So this is more kind of, informational. Here's the one with the irony. And I'll let you decide how much irony to assign to this. But essentially, if you go back to the earlier slides where everybody said, hey, they're great, I love them, we use them all the time. This slide says, but not in my town. And this is to be expected. I mean, it's not in my backyard sort of situation, but it is real. You can't ignore this. And this is part of the feedback that we got. And again, if you go to, and I think, Rachel, we have the QR codes available at the end of the, okay, not right now, but at the end. You'll be able to go online and see the full written responses. There are too many to put up on here. But essentially, we sort of ground them down into 3 different things for each side. On the positive side, people enjoyed the idea of sharing Kennett and all its good things with visitors. That actually was written down by a number of respondents. They said, hey, we have a wonderful town. I like to share it. They also said there's economic benefits brought by visitors, both to local shops, to the SDR owners, to restaurants, and whatever. There is a positive economic value to short-term rentals. And both the respondents and the visitor comments that I saw on a number of, we looked at a whole bunch of different SDR websites and got their reviews. The people like the fact that they could bring a large group of family members into town for a special occasion, have them all in one place, since we have no large hotels in the middle of town. Fortunately, we don't. Negative though, and this was pretty consistent across the board. There were thoughts that having short-term rentals would have a negative impact on housing stock. Now, frankly, I don't have any data to support that. It is something that comes up in frequent conversations around the country. In a lot of cases, municipalities have made rules and restrictions based on preserving rental stock or housing stock. Right now, we don't have the data to support that as happening or not happening within the borough. We can suppose, but we don't know. Same thing with the transient nature of visitors in the neighborhood. And I think this probably applies perhaps more to places like Cape May or Ocean City or Rehoboth, where half the population doesn't live there full time. So a lot of visitors coming and going. In Kennett, a lot of us have been here 10, 20, 30, in my case, 40 years. So we notice when people aren't the same next door as they were last week. Does that destroy the nature of the community? I don't know. Again, don't have any data to support that conclusion. And we probably would need to do a much further, longer, more exhausting survey to get that information. But it is something that needs to be considered when you talk about restrictions, regulations, whatever. And visitors can cause nuisances, and we've seen that. It's not a rampant problem within the borough. And again, we have approximately 3,000 domiciles within Kennett. We've got roughly 40 STRs. So just happenstances is probably not going to be a problem for most of us, unless you're living on a block with 1 or more STRs within. The other question, our next question we asked was, do you agree that STRs in Kennett should be registered with the borough? I apologize for that being cut off in the end. as you can see, everybody says yes, or virtually everybody says yes. So that's knowing who is operating an SDR and where it is. Okay. Rachel, there you go. Then we asked, well, should an SDR, when registered, be subject to regular health and safety inspection, as we do with long-term rentals? And again, the majority of folks said yes, which makes a lot of sense. One of the goals of the Planning Commission was to make sure that we're not creating instances within the borough of liability or danger to visitors. We want to make sure wherever they're staying, it's a safe place with the appropriate materials and exits and all the things that go into what Lexi and her group take care of. So that's a pretty obvious one. I apologize if this is going on, but I'll keep going. Then we said, well, something different. I have my notes, I probably should be looking at them. Should these be restricted? Now, the difference here is restriction says you can't do something, right? Again, 70% said yes. Okay. That's the tricky part, though, because restrictions have liabilities but should be restricted in any manner. Okay, thank you. No problem. Whether that restriction be location, owner occupancy, inflated fees, taxes, or other things. There are a fair number of things you could do. However, we run into, and no offense to Andy, but a lot of lawyers start getting involved when you start doing this. Regulation versus restriction. The regulation, as you can read up there, they're subject to registration, health and safety inspections, and normal kinds of things. The restriction is limiting them in some manner, whether it be a location, the number, whatever. As we saw in previous slides, residents fully support regulation and favor restrictions. However, there are both benefits and legal risks to restrictions. And we had a conversation with Mr. Crotty on this topic, and we'll get into some of that in a moment. These are the justifications that people presented as for restriction, limiting the impact on housing and affordability and availability, preserving the character of their neighborhoods, and reducing the potential for nuisance. Those were reflected in the negative comments that we got about STRs. Now, the common type of restrictions are rentals to certain zones, commercial zones only, for instance, not residential zones. The legal concern is it has to serve a legitimate government interest and applied in a non-discriminatory manner. In other words, you can't just say, oh, you can't do it here, and not have a justification or a reason for it. That gets you into this situation where other municipalities have tried this and they end up at court. Sometimes in their favor and sometimes not. And my guess it would be more often than not. Slide, please. Another one is owner occupancy. In other words, if you have a short-term rental, you have to own it on your property so that you are responsible for that property and that rental. So you keep the noise down, the trash down, as opposed to having an absentee landlord. Same thing applies, though. It has to serve a legitimate interest and it has to have a justification. Impermissible, glad I could say that correctly, restrictions is imposing high fees or taxes. We're not allowed to do that. In Pennsylvania, your fees have to be based on cost. You can't do a cost plus fee. And high fees may be considered legally as a disguised tax. And again, we're not allowed to tax certain things. Slide. Another impersonal, well, we talked about this just now. In Pennsylvania, the state collects a 6% sales tax on hospitality and a 1% hotel occupancy tax, which goes to the state's general fund. Boroughs are not allowed to do that. Counties, I don't know, Chester County impose a local hospitality tax? They can do that. And I think it's up to what, 5%, I think. Two. And again, that goes to the county and they use that money to support tourism. So you generate more people going to SDRs by taxing the current ones, so they can bring more people in. Borough can't do that. And Andy, if I did any of that wrong, you'll jump in there. You got it. Here's the crux of the matter legally, is that certain restrictions constitute an unconstitutional taking of the owner's ability to make money, in a sense. You can't stop people from profiting from their property, if you will. At least not without really good justification, or you pay them for that. In other words, they got to be compensated. You can have equal protection claims. So you can, oh, well, you've got STRs in R3 zone. Why can't I do it in an R2 zone? That creates problems, and that would be difficult to overcome. And due process, you just do it haphazardly and don't pay attention to the law. So what does this all mean in terms of what we think the Planning Commission decided unanimously to offer these suggestions? One is define short-term rentals within the current ordinances governing rental housing. So you make that a specific target within the rental zoning rental code. That allows you to require registration, would allow you to require health and safety inspection. And that's the second thing. So we expand those regulations to include that. Thirdly, we'd like to map the existing short-term rentals, monitor new applications, so we have an accurate picture of where they are, what they're doing, how many, and so forth, and what impact there is. So we gather data, and I would suggest to the public they can use the Borough Applicate online, the app, to report problems so that Borough staff can be aware of them. If you complain about it but don't tell anybody, it's not doing us any good. The reason I would suggest mapping this is because you want to see the growth. You want to see the ongoing effect. Again, when I lived in the township before that. Was born and raised in the township. The 40 years I've lived here, essentially, we started with B&Bs, 20 some years ago, legalizing them. Airbnbs are fairly new. I don't know what it's going to be like in 10 years, 20 years, or even 5 years. Kennett is now a tourist destination, and our mayor has said that that's the primary role of Kennett these days. Will that exist 3 years from now, 5 years now? We don't know. So we have to look not at the next 4 years, the next 40 years. What are we doing for the future of the borough that will have a lasting impact, whether it be housing, whether it be the nature of the community, or whatever. Determine if enacting what, if any, restrictions meets the goal. And if you remember back when we first talked about this, we had a mission statement. The mission statement was protect the economic rights of property owners while preserving the nature of our community. That's what determine is. If you want to do restrictions, why, what benefit, and how can you do it? Because we'd rather see us come up with a plan that's going to take some time than jump into stuff and get sued because we can't afford lawsuits. We have a lot of trouble paying for the other stuff. We don't want to get involved in a lot of legal trouble. So our suggestion here is move now on the regulation or the registration and inspection part of it. Take some time to consider what happens, plus give time to those folks to adhere to the new regulations. Think about fines and fees and all that stuff. And then as, say, 6 months to a year, let's take a look and see what it's doing, how it's moving forward, and whether or not there are ways to impose some restrictions that frankly, folks, is a political decision. And you'll have to make that. Any questions from you folks?
Leave, if you don't mind, leave that slide up, Rachel, please. Lexi, is there anything you'd like to add from the borough's perspective?
So the staff, myself and Joe and the rest of the codes department, we're working with the planning commission. The survey is done solely by the planning commission. The staff did not have any input or involvement in creating the survey. We are here just to see how the survey goes, and our goal of the staff is to really just have a place in our ordinance for short-term rentals. The definition of short-term rentals, we would like some regulations. We want to make sure that they're inspected and everyone is staying in a safe space while they're in Kennett.
Thanks, Lexi. And first and foremost, thanks very much to the Planning Commission, Andy, Doug, Carol, who were here, and the other members who were not here tonight for the time and effort. This was a long one. We started this in the spring, and you guys have been at it since then. Thank you very, very much. And Lexi, to you and Joe for that involvement. This study is certainly not statistically powered. It's a feel. It's anecdotal.
The only thing I would answer to that, Bob, is I've done a lot of surveys in a lot of different places for government agencies. And the consistency of the responses lends credence, even though it's a relatively low number. Again, 140 responses out of 6,000 people is not a whole lot, granted. But I don't think overall it would change that much if we had 500 responses.
Okay. A couple of folks mentioned on Monday they did not get a copy of the survey, were not aware of it. How was it distributed? And how do you know for sure it's Kennett residents or not?
Second question first. Good faith. We asked the question, are you a resident of Kennett Square? Now, a lot of people think they live in Kennett Square and they live in somewhere, they live in the townships or whatever, but it was just a good faith question. Secondly, we mentioned at several council meetings, if I remember correctly, we advertised it in the on the e-newsletter after the meetings. We also had it advertised in Kennett Collaborative's weekly newsletter twice, I think. And I extended the deadline a couple of weeks just to give more time for folks. Unless I stand on Broad Street with a sandwich board, that's about the only way we could do it.
Lexi, do we have a good handle on short-term rentals in the borough? How many there are, where they are, whether they're being inspected or not?
We currently do not. Unfortunately, our ordinance does not specify anything regarding short-term rentals, so there's not much we can do in regards to inspecting them. Carol did a lot of research in how many short-term rentals based on the websites that are currently in the borough. But putting this into our ordinance and allowing us to require registrations would give us those numbers and that ability to track the short-term rentals.
You have any feel, even if it's anecdotal, of those that are short-term rentals that are being inspected, what the general condition of them are? Are they safety risks in general or not, or it's all over the board like apartments or homes?
I would personally think that they would be on the higher end of passing inspections just because they are charged higher fees and they have more turnover. Also, Airbnb, VRBO owners are rated on their stays, so it gives them that kind of incentive to keep their place nice and up to code. Well, up to code as much as someone staying there would know if it's up to code. But that's the whole goal of this, I think, is to be able to get into those units and inspect them so we can make sure.
We reviewed a lot of reviews from people who have stayed in Kennett Square.
Right.
And the general, most were rated pretty highly as being comfortable and whatever.
Carol?
I was the one, maybe it's better if I come up. Stand up.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was the one who looked on Airbnb and Vrbo, and then if I couldn't find the actual address or didn't know where it was, I I ran through all of the photographs on each of the sites, and they would often show you the address of the property. And so I was able to locate, I think, 34 to 40. It depends on what you like. Two of them are hotels. One is the hotel on the corner of a Cypress, the Book Hotel, and the other is the new one on Birch Street. So those are large, but the others are actually all a single rental. It's not, there were the old Kennett B&B on Garfield, Garfield and State Street rents out their rooms. Possibly the one on Marshall, but everything else, no, there's another one further down on State at 502 State that is in a house, in a business house. But the others are all rented as a solid unit. So you can rent a whole house or an ADU. So they are not part of a home. So there are only really like 3 that are a part of a home situation.
Thank you. Ellie?
Lexi, do you have any rentals that you're inspecting now that are short-term rentals?
I don't know, just because they don't specify on the applications, if it is a short-term rental, or we just haven't been tracking it that way.
Okay.
So going forward, we would have that on the rental application if it is being used as a short-term rental, so we can track that going forward, but currently we
You
don't.
just don't know because you don't.
Don't know.
We,
I mean,
yeah.
I had a discussion with a neighbor who has long-term rentals, and she's like, of course they should have regular rental permits and the rental inspections.
Mhm.
Why not? They're apartments or they're, there
Yeah.
are rental units, just like my rental units.
I think it's hard because sometimes people just rent out an ADU or a room in their house,
And they
so they
don't-
don't want
they
to
don't think
register
of
their
it.
whole house as
Yeah.
a rental.
Yeah.
And some of them are, right? Some of them are certainly part of the.
Yeah, and I'm sure
program.
some are, they just aren't
Yeah.
marked as short-term rental because there just wasn't an option on the application in the past.
Council, Mr. Mayor. Folks in the audience, love to get your comments and your thoughts. I mean, eventually, I think we'll at least poll on these questions up here to give a feel in terms of direction to the Planning Commission.
I just want to bring it to the council's attention. I'm over at Magnolia Place. So we have modified our homeowners association, no short-term rentals.
Okay.
And a restricted amount of permits for people that have longer term. So a lot of your points you put up there is what our board and the people in our group. So just to give you a foundation, there's 79 unit owners and there, 65 voted on it. And I think we only had 5 dissent. And so if you see a lot of them for sale, it's the original developer, it's the real estate agent and so forth, because they have to divest themselves. They were for this. They said, we don't want short-term rentals. We don't want VRBO in there. We think it'll enhance property values and make more of a community feel. So Cliff is our president. You could probably get more of the details, has the actual wording. We went through our attorney. That all got passed. It's actually an amendment to our homeowners association. So I just want you to realize there's one block there you can probably look at.
Gotcha.
It's not going to have this.
Good to know that. I mean, so a homeowners association can have their own more strict rules as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other comments, please. Doug, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that, I'll speak into the mic since people are on the phone. Charlotte? No. And we did have Elliot Dalton. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Elliot, but Elliot is an Airbnb consultant or bed and breakfast consultant. And he just shared that what we're doing is what a lot of municipalities are doing right now. And from his experience, he has not seen the community nature go downhill. It's just the opposite of that. And it feels really part of the community. It helps the town, and that this is the direction that most municipalities are taking. So it seems like this is fitting into what municipalities are taking as far as initial action items.
Thank you.
I actually missed the last planning commission meeting. I was flying in from an Airbnb in Montana. So I was up in the air. However, one of my concerns, and I voiced this to the planning commission in writing, was one particular Airbnb, and it is on East Linden Street. The story behind it is it's in a new apartment building, renovation of an old apartment building. And if you know about East Linden Street, since I think the late 1990s or early 2000s, they received a number of state grants for renovation of homes to bring them up to code. I worked as a volunteer consultant on some of their boards, so looking at landscape issues and things like that, playgrounds and what they could be doing. So I knew a little bit about this. So I know they receive government funding, and they have an overlay that has a special consideration for this neighborhood. Well, what happened with this building, and this was within the past 2 or 3 years, is that it was sold and renovated, and all of the residents were evicted. These are low-income residents. The families are 3 generations living in the same neighborhood, and they know each other really well. My concern is that we have one Airbnb there. The costs of these homes are low. This is an area that will be gentrified immediately, and I'm concerned. In other communities that we looked at, and we did look at other communities and how they dealt with Airbnb, they asked the neighborhoods, this was Lancaster City, they asked their neighborhoods what they wanted to do and how they felt about this before they enacted a short-term rental. And they decided, they actually came up with a solution that they would put, they came up with certain solutions. But for the purpose, and I think this may be separate from saying you can't put this in residential. That's not what I'm saying. This is a residential district. However, it has had overlays of governmental concern, so that I think it's special. And it's a place that goes back to the 1840s as it was a 2-acre arboretum by Vincent Barnard. So the old trees are from that point, and they sit there among these beautiful homes, and they're well taken care of. And the people who live there are rentals there as well, but it's an amicable neighborhood, and they fought crime.
Thank
So
you. No, it's a good point.
thank you.
Thank you. I guess that's really more of a legal issue in terms of whether there's any restrictions, deed restrictions that are being broken. So I guess we can certainly ask our solicitor to look into that if the planning commission hasn't already, to see if there are any deed restrictions on that. I think we all know the apartment building we're talking about. On
Work with the planning
East
commission on
Linden.
that.
Thank you.
It wouldn't have been deed restrictions. The whole area was considered historical. They had the big sign up there, the whole area. That apartment building should have never been allowed to be touched in the manner that it was. And you know, I spoke to that. So that's, and a matter of fact, all the old neighborhood people are basically gone. Rentals on there are $2,500 a month. Somebody told one house into 2, so he gets 5,000. Okay? So this is the misdeed in our town because we don't have the proper zoning governance. So we have the exposure with our zoning people being able to be able to see it. But the people already spoke on this. They were here in full force. Whether you call it Airbnb, whether you call it this new terminology, short-term rentals, whether you call it a hotel, whether you call it a boarding house, we already had regulations. We have regulations, and if you don't have it in your new book, then we got to go back to the old book, and that old law still stands. Hotels, inns, boarding houses were separate from general rentals, even though everybody falls under the same inspection process. So no one's exempt from it. So let's not talk like this is something new boy on the block that just came. It's here, it's a rental. What I say about the short-term rentals, whether you call them accessory dwelling units or Airbnbs, they have destroyed our town. Coupled with rentals, you hear me, coupled with rentals, they have destroyed our town. That town center up there is supposed to be of the local citizens. That's what town centers are. And remember, Kennett's only 1 square mile, so don't talk like we're Lansdowne, Upper Darby, Westchester, Coatesville, or any other town, because we're not. We're only 1 square mile. And so when you have all these people coming in, you got a bunch of strangers interacting. The chief's job is going to be hard. I'll give you that. Because you're bringing new people in, don't know nobody. And I'm going to tell you, that person was on my yard at 5:45 with that dog, okay? That's what happens. That I had to get up out of my bed. If I was dressed, I would have run out there, would have been trouble. I'm saying there's a lot of inconsiderate things when you don't know each other. There's a lot of new behaviors because these people want all them lights. They want all that New York cheap glamour with lights and glitter, and we don't. But you've done it. And you expect us to eat mud. These people who already built accessory dwelling units are in violation of our code. If they're operating, she don't know about it because they're doing it undercover. They've not come to you for an application to rent. They are in violation of our code, and there should be no retroactive consideration for them, whatever you put in place. Accessory dwelling units are not only separate standing units, they are also attached units. And other municipalities are very strict, and use their ordinance to govern them. If you say, they're going to ask you the purpose of what you're going to use this rental for. If you say, oh, my mom needs an apartment, and a lot of them have said, when your mom no longer occupies that, you cannot turn that into a moneymaker. These people come here for money. They're realtors, developers, or some other type of conglomerate that has come just to make money. There's nobody coming to Kennett for tourism. We don't have nothing here. But we're being advertised along the East Coast like Dover and anybody else and bringing people from different states. And there's no jobs here to bring them here. There's no more DuPont. We don't have no big person. And this tourist industry you're talking about, what them little jobs that people have cleaning or cooking up to the marketplace, it don't feed nobody. And people need to be fed. So when you look at the NVF, you better talk about a turnkey operation where people can be fed from it, get jobs and benefits. No, you're looking for your own pockets.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Your
Okay?
time-
I didn't
time's
do
up.
4 minutes yet. You're tired of hearing it.
No, you
You're
did.
tired of hearing it.
You did.
That's what you are.
Is there any other
That's what you
comment
are.
this evening? Please come on up.
Because you're pushing this, Bob Norris. The public told you no. We had a meeting here. You were told no. And you're trying to get it in by any means necessary, no matter what name you put on it. It's still, I can't believe that. No matter what name you put on it, it's still the same. You want to work for your friends and yourself.
We can all have our own opinions, whether they're right or wrong. Ma'am?
Hi, my name's Gina. I live at 225 North Broad Street. I just want to emphasize some things to consider as you are looking at short-term rentals in town. So I think Andy brought up a lot of good points of why you really need to think about what it's doing in this town. And if Mr. Mayor feels that we are a primary vacation destination, we have to preserve what we have. So one thing is, first of all, it reduces our long-term housing supply. So it drives up rent, and it reduces the amount of rentals for families, and it makes it harder for people to find affordable housing. It's a disruption to our neighborhoods and our community. It disrupts the fabric of our community, leaving long-term residents feeling less connected, an increase of noise and disruptive behavior. Safety concerns. I know that you said that there weren't any safety concerns, but I've had some at my own home. It's harder to track. Those who are coming here for short term, their risk is a lot less. They don't really care about our community. And so they're not going to worry so much about the impact. It moves away from employing people in our community, such as if a regular hotel or an Airbnb or a regular B&B were to come in, they would be hiring people in our community. They would be using our local resources. They'd be using the T on State Street. So these STRs are not doing that. It's a strain on our infrastructure, additional pressure, parking, roads, waste management, utilities. We don't have the resources to accommodate more. So I'm just being mindful of that. I think it's a wear and tear on our parks and our community that our taxes are paying for. Property values, rental units will lose the charm of this town and people will not want to visit. And right now our property values are so high that they will be becoming unaffordable. Actually, they probably are very unaffordable for many people. I couldn't live here now if I hadn't bought when I did. I do believe that it's a threat to our cultural and historical preservation. People come here because they want a hallmark town. They want to see the charm of Kennett Square. And if people aren't taking care of their homes in the way that we have, then that's not going to be there anymore and people won't want to visit. And I don't think it will be a destination. So I just think about why people visit Kennett, why they come here, why people live here. And let's try not to take away from that, but add to that instead of just filling people's pockets.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Is there one other comment? We've got another beefy topic to get into, so just cognizant of the time, please.
I'll just make this brief. Sandy D'Antonio, 220 North Broad Street. I think the parking is a really big issue with short-term rentals, number one. And number two, I don't remember the exact site it's called, but there's a neighborhood site. And there was an individual living in the borough that wanted to rent one bedroom, share the kitchen for $1,700. That's all I want to say.
Lexi, if Airbnbs, assuming they're inspected, would require the same parking as any other home or apartment, fair?
Yes.
Okay. 2 parking spaces per unit minimum.
Mike Friday's advice to us was to maximize use of the current code and zoning ordinances rather than try to invent something new.
Okay. Last comment?
Yeah, just something quick to add. I'm Francesca. I am Kathleen's daughter, but I also have my own individual opinions, believe it or not.
Give me your address.
Yes, I was getting to that. 240 North Washington Street. I have lived in Kennett my whole life. Right now I'm looking at places to move. I can't afford to live here. So we talk about logistics and parking and like upkeep. Those are separate issues. And I really think the biggest issue at hand here is affordability. And we talked about how short-term rentals are more profitable, and that leads to a conflict because there's too much incentive to do that. So I really think that's the most important issue here, is looking at that affordability and less so keeping people out of Kennett. Like, I think people should feel free to come visit. Doesn't mean they have to stay in the borough. I'm more about making sure that people are able to stay in Kennett, especially people who have been here for generations. And that's not just on East Linden, that's in the borough as a whole. So thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Council, recommendation from the Planning Commission is define short-term rentals within current ordinances governing rental housing. Lexi, does that make sense to you? Is that enforceable? Is that something you and your staff?
Yes.
Is there any objection, any finessing of that question? Is anyone from council not in agreement that we do this? I'll take that as a no. So what do we have to do to make sure that happens?
We would have to amend our ordinance to include short-term rentals and their definition.
Fair enough. The will of the council to ask the Planning Commission, Lexi and team to do that.
Yes. Yes.
Second question, expand the current ordinances to include registration and inspection of short-term rentals, including establishing fee schedules. Again, pretty low-hanging fruit, I think. I think everyone feels that from the survey, and I think around the room, that the safety and definability of where they are is an important thing. Is there anyone that objects to that?
No, and I'd also say it's also only fair to the people with long-term rentals.
Lexi, are you and your team able to do that
Yes.
immediately? Is that something we can start doing
Yes.
tomorrow?
Yep.
I guess needs to be some mechanism to find, these Airbnbs that probably come and go, right? I've got a room for a month. Let me see if I can make a couple $100 off it, right? That's part of the issue, I think, in terms of enforcing it.
Yeah, enforcement will take some time to figure out and perfect, but the ordinance is the first step.
Does the current ordinance provide for fines on long-term rentals that are not inspected?
Yes, if you aren't registered within a certain time frame and you don't get your inspection, then you would be subject to a fine.
Map the existing short-term rentals and monitor new applications to develop accurate placement and impact of short-term rentals. And that sounds like an administrative responsibility, so we can answer some of the questions that we don't know tonight. I think that's a no-brainer unless any council objects to that. And then the fourth point is determine if enacting what, if any, restrictions meet the goal of serving property owners, economic rights, or preserving the nature of our community. That's a whole lot of words, Andy. What does that mean?
That means if you're going to enact a restriction, you're going to harm somebody's property right for taking. Whether you can justify it legally is a different question. But what we're suggesting is if you want to go to restrictions, start thinking about it as how you put them in places where harm does not come to you.
Does any council member or the mayor have any thoughts in terms of what the next step or steps might be later?
I think, to be honest, Bob, I think you need a better understanding before you go there.
Just trying to get Paul if there's any thoughts right now where we are. Kathleen, you gonna say?
Well, it was that, I know planning committee is already considering all these things and discussing whether it's or don't. Looking at where most of the Airbnbs are currently located. There's considerations to limiting.
And how much our bandwidth should be put on this issue? I understand in New York City.
That's something we would want to get Andy and his team involved.
I understand in New York City right now, or at least Manhattan, you can't have an Airbnb or short-term rental unless you live in the property or something to that effect. So there's ways to do it. Andy?
I was just going to say that perhaps the way to look at this is to tackle the first three, to then utilize that information to then provide the council with information to then determine if you can place restrictions legally with, those reasonable recommendations and regulations based upon the information that we gather from defining what a short-term rental is, registering them, and then mapping them out to see what neighborhoods they impact and how they impact those neighborhoods.
I fully agree with that approach. Let's start with these three things. There are three other things that just in reading some of the proposed ordinances in Westchester, Phoenixville, that I think we need to think about, like maybe next year. One is parking restrictions. So if we're renting an entire house, then you could end up with multiple families bringing cars, which would be much more than the typical usage of that house. Occupancy limits. So Westchester's proposing occupancy limits of, I think it's 2 people per bedroom in the Airbnb, which is worth, so that we don't get the, a party that's just like lots and lots of people in the house. And then the third is, rager. We don't want ragers. And then the third would be reconsidering the amounts of those fines for failure to register for the case of short-term rentals where it's really hard to catch them. So I'd like to make sure that it doesn't get lost, that those other things are things we need to revisit if we do these first three things first.
So why don't we task ourselves that in the spring, late spring, could the planning commission please come back to the council or maybe mid-year, you guys decide what the right timing is after you've had some stats and some enforcement, just to kind of come back and say, okay, these are the next steps that we recommend. I think it's a good point. Okay. Thank you. Any other final comment from council, mayor? Thank you very, very much for what you've done. It's to bring it much more into light and to start to get a handle on that. Thank you very much to all the folks involved. So we do have another topic. And it's an important topic. It's what do we do, if anything, with this property that we're in right now in the surrounding buildings? We've owned it for three plus years?
3 years.
3 years. We've tried to rent it for the last 2.5 years.
3 years.
3 years since day one. Okay. Formerly with a broker, I guess, over the last 1.5 years or so, with zero luck. Earlier this year, the council, at least the majority of the council, expressed a desire to work to have this serve as the greater good for the community, that let's bring people, companies, organizations into the building that have a broader community good. The grocer was an example of that we tried to have happen. But here we are 6 months after that discussion, and still the building is empty. It's expensive to operate and certainly expensive to repair. We've asked Kyle and Nick to pull together sort of the basics, the cost of operations, what the building costs itself, our ongoing operational costs, any capital investments we made, and sort of the rental activity, or at least what we've tried to do. And then to question all of us, literally all of us in this room, with do we stay the course? Do we rent and accept that we're not going to cover the costs if we're going to rent it? Do we sell or condo or lease back some or all of the building? And any other ideas that are out there for what we can do to kind of get out of this financial situation that we're in. Kyle?
Get to the public comment for this, and there are people who are watching online, and if you don't come up to speak with the microphone, they can't hear you, so they're missing half of the conversation. So we're asking you to please use the microphone. I'm happy to pass it around.
Thank you.
Yeah, we did our best here to answer the questions that you raised, President Norris. So hopefully this is helpful, but I also think this deserves a little more in-depth discussion. So Rachel, thank you. This is, for those who have been coming to these meetings, you've probably seen these numbers, but just under 10 million is the bond on the building. The annual payments go through 2041. As many of you know, these costs are spread over about a handful of our enterprise funds, but then they also, they're called wraparound funds. So as debt is retired in each of those funds, the debt for this building then wraps around. So you maintain a relatively level amount of debt annually, but it ebbs and flows based on the fund, depending on what existing debt was in there and what the retirement schedule is for it. Very, very basic. The current budget has operating costs of about $250,000 and capital costs of about $285,000 as sort of our set aside planned spend. Capital investments, and I'll give some more context on these as well. So capital investments in 2023 were $355,000. In 24 thus far, they've been $75,000. Now the elephant in the room is that we've also put a $4 million capital investment, which is our new police station. So when we repave the road into the police station, is that a police station cost, or was that repaving of asphalt that is the building cost? So just keep that in mind. If you could just go back, you're fine. This doesn't include some larger capital expenses that we know are coming, but frankly, we just don't have the budget to deal with them yet. So the one that comes to mind, Rob would probably know the number better offhand, but I think it's about $700,000 to do a lot of the repointing of our brickwork. Yeah. So that's, it's one example, right? We know we've replaced the roofing recently when we bought the building, but we know at some point you have to redo the asphalt. And so the capital cost is higher than what's shown there. And then the next one, again, this is, we tried to put together what we could kind of quickly here. This is looking at recent lease proposals. We have had formal and informal offers to sell the building, but we wanted to focus just on leasing because those were given to us, very clearly. As you remember, council, there was a proposal back in the spring for an art studio. It's hard to sort of define it, but essentially a space for people to come and do the date night events that you've probably heard of, where you go and do a cooking class or an art class. It had that feel to it. And they came in at $6 a square foot. We countered and they walked away without a counter. Kennett Community Grocery was the most recent. Many of you were in those meetings. Discussion started in the fall of 21 or early 22. We got to a letter of intent this past summer at 17 a square foot and 12 months of rent abatement. After they did some more financial analysis, they came back at $13.50 with a 2-year lease abatement. We then countered and they walked away at that number. So again, there have been some offers to sell. There have been a lot of discussions with various nonprofits, but in terms of written proposals, these are the two that we've gotten.
Thanks, Kyle. The market's changed, right? We have to accept that when the borough purchased the building, it was a much, much different real estate market. The rental market, especially for office space, is tanked. And the value of the leased space is not there. We've been looking for $17 a square foot. We have a $6 and a $13.50 offer with 2 years of free rent, so the net of that is frightening to think about. And the value, frankly, the value of the building has probably decreased as well overall. I mean, I think the $4 million grant we have, which is an asset, is probably offsetting a lot of the negatives at the value of the building. That's my guess. It's not gospel. But do we keep it? Do we keep trying? Do we just suck it up and say, hey, let's keep putting money into it and use it as a community center? It's expensive to do that. We're struggling. Council, love to have your thoughts. We're not going to come up with a decision tonight. Just want to get some general guidance for Kyle and team. But what are the next steps? What do we need to do? Because every day we don't do something, it's costing us. So, thoughts?
I think what we do also have to remember is that the option of where we were on Marshall Street, the decision was made. It was the least expensive of whether building space. So if we're keeping that in mind, nobody expected the pandemic. Nobody expected all that to happen and things change. I think that we can keep looking for opportunities. Town's not, there's 2 big empty buildings as well. So we understand the issues, but are we talking to all the partners that we could, maybe some other government services?
Mm-hmm. We certainly reached out to the county and a couple of legislators to see if they had office needs. I think Ellie's actually meeting with them later in the month as well. I think one of the facts we have to accept is we're not property managers. It's not our business. We're not good. And we shouldn't be. That's not what we're being paid to do or asked to do. So that's an extra burden on everyone from a financial standpoint, Nick and team, and certainly Rob, especially in his group of having to spend an awful lot of time in here. Did you want to say something?
Just think, I would love to see the opportunity to condo the building and sell off, condominium space, so you could have shared, a condo association that would share the maintenance costs, and to be able to use the income from selling condominium space. We talked about that originally when we were purchasing the building. We talked about at the time of purchase about condominiumizing each floor. just for history, when we were in that process, when we made our first offer in this building, it was a joint offer with the library. The library was going to convert the space and be here instead of make a new building, right? So that was the very first, when we made our very first offer, it was going to be shared space with the police department occupying what it is now a small space downstairs next to it for administration. And the rest of it was going to be the library. When Genesis didn't come back fast enough and the library was ready to pull the trigger on what they wanted to do, that's when they kind of pulled out. At the same time, we had very serious conversations with Kennett School District was looking at the space for administration. There were a lot of in 2018 and 19 prior to that, there were a lot of users for the space. And the purchase price here then being offset by rental was significantly cheaper than building brand new. We had proposals to build a brand new station, a municipal hall and everything, and it was $10 million cheaper to buy this and retrofit it and then use the space to generate income to further offset it than it was to build from scratch, right? So that's how we got here. But I think it would be, I would love to see what marketing would look like if we condominiumized the space that we weren't using and then sold that space off to generate bulk revenue, but then also to have shared expenses covered in a condominium association. I think we should ask our broker to tell us what that would look like on the sales market as opposed to the lease market, right? To hear back from them on what they think the sales market would look like. I think in this building would be commercial. And I think we've also heard opportunities to develop part of the land, right? That do you want to develop, do we want to, again, subdivide off part of the land along South Street for affordable housing or other opportunities? There's other opportunities there, but I think we need an active task force outside of just staff to be able to keep pushing it forward because there's only so much they can do at a time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kyle, love to hear, you're the business manager, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think my main recommendation would be that we change course in some way. So we've been trying to rent this building for 3 years now with an intent to maintain ownership of it. And that's just not working. And we've tried quite a few brokers at this point. So I would recommend financially that we really explore selling the whole site and redeveloping it. But if that's a bridge too far, at least make a change in your broker or condo part of it. We have to make a change if this is not working.
It's a sticky, messy situation because of the bonds on the building as well, and they're divided between different funds, and they come due at different times, and you can pay off at different times. And plus, now we have a $4 million plus police station that we're obligated to hold on to. So it's a bunch of stuff. Love to hear some brief comments from anyone. Margaret, please.
This has been a mess. This building, and it
You
was.
mind just for everyone else at home?
Margaret Opplinger, 251 North Broad Street. Let's face it, the pandemic was 2020, this is 2024. So I think that for a town of 1 mile square to have this building, why you couldn't have stayed in the other building after you spent all that money to renovate it and then sold it for nothing. And at this point, okay, we're past that, right? We have the police station up there. We have a whole L-shaped property. It's not very big, but it's probably big enough for the borough. I mean, I don't think we need more apartments. I think if you're going to make anything, make townhouses here. Do something like that and utilize that space. That's my suggestion.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
A few years ago, there was a group called the Intergen Coalition looking at ways to bring people of all ages and abilities into the borough or keep them in the borough. and I think I recognized there was a problem. I mentioned it to Joan Holiday, and she got the ball rolling. And we invited a consultant to talk to us about different things that we could be doing. And one was, we have enough people in the borough to have visiting nurses. We could have a visiting nurse station here as something that we need one in the borough to provide health care. And we have the population who could use it. So that may be one use. Another is, have you tried talking about community college and education as part of this as well? We're tied in with the high school. It's convenient. We had a young man today who went through community college and then went on to college to become, now he's one of our police officers who is skilled in psychology and sociology. So these types of things might be helpful. They are governmental, so it's who knows what's going to happen with the crystal ball. But maybe this is something, or this type of thing, so that it is community oriented.
Thanks, Carol. Other thoughts, please, Daniel?
Daniel Embry with Kennett Collaborative. I want to recognize the difficulty of this conversation and there not being a silver bullet here, and some real kind of challenges financially for the borough that we'd like to see solved. I do want to advocate for the community use of this space. I think that the community has greatly benefited from the events and the programs that have been here for many years. And we've seen an increase in that activity this year. And I think it has been a benefit to the community. And I've enjoyed seeing more community events here representing a wider cross-section of Kennett Square. I do want to point out that our, at least from our organization's perspective, our use of this space as a community space actually predates the borough owning the property. So there are ways to kind of move forward where we can use the property for the community. That doesn't necessarily mean the borough owning it, but if you consider selling it, how you sell it may matter, and whom you sell it to, and all of that may matter. So I would, invite you, as I know you will, to take those things into consideration. I do also believe that there may be more grant opportunities available in the future to help offset some of the cost. And Kyle and I have met with Michael Shore from the DCED to talk about how maybe some Main Street Matters funding could come into play here. And as we can be, if we can be helpful in these types of opportunities, we'd like to and invite your collaboration on that. And finally, I do just want to kind of advocate also for the kind of condo concept. What I like about the condo concept is that it would allow you to create kind of upfront rules or systems of how the space can be used that could preserve and protect some of the community programs and events that I think you all love and appreciate, and that the community values, while also being able to kind of sell within a framework parts. So I'd love to see more exploration of that.
Thanks, Daniel. Any others, Senator?
Hi, Sandy D'Antonio, 220 North Broad Street. My question is, if you went to the condo route, how would you get financing since there's not money available? It would take money to convert to condominiums, in my opinion. The other thing is, I think it's nice that the community can use this, but we need to think about the taxpayers and what empty space or events cost residents and not everybody on the outside. We do have a nice park, and it is nice to have this parking lot here. But I do think that we have to look at our tax base, and our taxes are not inexpensive. The other thing is, I was on the same wavelength as Margaret. The old police station, the building could go up, which would take up less space, and you'd have plenty of parking if you could sell this building. And I know I'm happy for the chief that he's got a nice facility, but maybe somehow that could be worked out that they could stay. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Juan was up first and Ms. Watson. And if there's anyone on the Zoom call that wants to put a comment in, just type it in and Rachel will read it out.
So I heard a couple.
Would you
weeks-
just announce?
Juan Tafoya, 301 Ray Street. I heard a couple of weeks ago that when this building was being sold, CAX was made an offer that they would be allowed to use this building for a certain discount to the price. Whatever happened to that conversation? It came from a very trusted person who was in that conversation. That when this building was being sold, CAX, the owner of this building, said that they'll discount us the amount if we let CAX use one of these buildings. Whatever happened to that?
That was part of the conversation, but CAX was given the land by the Pia family where they're going, and they chose not to come here.
Yeah, I was just curious about that question. We could also, for example, ask the Mexican consulate to have a satellite office down here. LCH, I was in talks a couple months ago before my end of my term. Some mental health places could come down here, use some of our space. Focus this more on community oriented, like mental health, recreation, all that stuff. That would be a great opportunity to use, especially this bottom part of the building. Thank you.
Thanks, Juan. Charlotte?
Almost forgot what I was going to say. You make me get up and down. Well, first off, this is what happens when you don't confer or take reference from the public. This building was sprung on us. We had no idea. When they said they were buying it, it was just buying it, it was done. That's what I say about having presentations. The public gets to have their healthy input so you can know where they're coming from. This building was always a disaster area from the beginning. That's a pipe dream, whoever had that. And they must have been in the business.
But it's here. What do we do now?
And I told you to sell it. Because we have too much, I'm sorry that you asked me, and that's just my gut response. Because the bottom line is that you're bleeding the taxpayers to pay for this. And here's my first thought why I went to a senior moment. There's 4 houses next to that police station. They weren't inhabitable. I happen to know the individuals in dire straits and trouble in some legal matters about all 4 of them at the same time. Family member. 2 brick, 2 would have been burned out or had a fire. I suggested the borough buy it. Because at that point, you could have got them 4 structures, probably for less than $300,000. And you could have had a perfect square to build everything you need. And the police could have used the bottom floor. They had to have some parking spaces for quick getaways on the property, but they could have used the bottom floor of the garage. But there's some people in this town that keep trying to worry about feathering their own nests. A condo. That's not the average citizen to buy a condo or to rent one. Or even a middle-class person waiting, I'll say today, middle class, I don't know what middle class is because they're making it up as we go along, but I'm going to say $70,000, 60 to 80. They can't afford it. Well, so what? We don't owe them nothing. We don't owe them nothing. And you got so much debt beyond. They said, you're talking about that little bit of money you spent for it. You know, I got the figures, the $800 to clean, $1,000 to clean it up, $1 million. Hiring the people down in Greenville, $1 million. Okay. It just goes up to $1.3 million for the 2 roofs and the HVAC that we were told they were going to fix. And when it ends up, it was our money. Then it was the architect, engineers. I mean, we could just go on. And I just think, I hate to see a law, I don't know how you're going to do it. So you got a terrible thing in front of you. I don't know how you're going to rectify this situation because you let somebody take you down an abyss that shouldn't have been.
Thank you. Final comment? Just to try to summarize, I think were there any comments or questions, Rachel, on Zoom? Okay. It sounds like we don't know what the heck we should do. But I think the most sane recommendation was let's get more serious, taking Kyle's advice to kind of change gears and taking the mayor's advice in terms of getting some smart heads together. Sounds like we have some retirees in the audience who might be interested in getting involved in that. If you have a desire to get involved in a task force, I hate the concept of the task force. It takes forever and ever and ever, but a group that can come back to council in the short order, please drop a line to help. That's good. help@kennettsq.org. help@kennettsq.org. And by the way, you can use that for anything. You're missing a water bill. There's a road pothole. You don't like your neighbor's car or chickens. I mean, you can send anything you want. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Fair enough. I deserve that. That's for sure. Is that fair with council? Any other recommendations on next steps there? Thanks. It's a heavy subject. Not to date, but it's a fair question that, yeah. And there's details there as well, of course. Yeah. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, tomorrow night, Thursday night at the library, the the NVF, I wish. The NVF developers are having, Matt mentioned it on Monday, tomorrow night at the library, 6 p.m. They're having a discussion, their perspective. They would love to get everyone's input, good and bad. Well, I'm sure they don't want the bad, but they'll get it, on what to do with the NVF property. That's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. in the library. Any other comments from any council member, manager?
There will also be a ability to watch virtually. So that'll be on our website.
Okay, terrific. In here, that's another, we can bring ice cubes next time. Are there any veterans? Are there any veterans in the room? Thank you, Rob. Much appreciated. If you know a veteran, and I'm sure we all do, reach out to them over the weekend or certainly on Monday to say thanks for putting your neck out there for us and for our freedoms that we have today. Thanks. I know it was a long, hot meeting in many ways. Appreciate it. We're adjourned. Good night.